Welcome back. It's Otter PR's Scaling Secrets podcast, and Laura Barnard is here. She is the visionary founder of BREAKTHRU Brands, and they are on a mission to transform the landscape of leadership. They have this philosophy rooted in breaking barriers and championing equity. And Laura leverages her extensive experience in leading global brands to build a future where diverse voices in leadership are not just heard, but they are celebrated and they are amplified. She has an exciting book coming up soon called Leadership Types, a barrier-breaking approach to empower leaders. It will be available summer 2024 at leadershiptypes.com. So we're going to figure out some secrets, figuring out how to achieve this, all these the goals that are sometimes talked about but hard to achieve, right? Leadership, authenticity, influence, and so much more. So, Laura, glad to be speaking with you.
Glad to be here, Robert. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you. And so we introduced you a little bit, hyped you up for our audience, rather. But in your own words, what are you up to? What has you just super excited to jump out of bed in the morning?
Well, we are, after 5 years, I'm still excited to jump out of bed and run this company, Breakthrough. We are really on a mission to empower leaders to lead authentically, effectively, and really transform the face of leadership. And so, what an exciting time to be doing this type of work. And we really believe our approach to advancing leadership that's based in a branding methodology is highly unique, highly innovative, and really can be a game changer for today's leader.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk about it because I have to admit that there were a number of years where I ignored a lot of the kind of leadership advice because I got stuck in the buzzwords. But then when I realized that, hey, my whole life I've been butting up against people as far as like the communication and sometimes saying like, hey, can you do this, and not meeting them where they're at and maybe having to do some of the work myself or getting frustrated or just dealing with the drama. And then now finally in my adult years, I'm like, hey, there's something to it. And especially if we say like, hey, some of the buzzwords, the keywords, we do hear them a lot, but we do need to get like the reminders, and we need to show leadership and to set a good example and be authentic and empower others and all those things. But do you kind of come across the same barrier of saying like, well, there's all this leadership talk, but then you sometimes hear the phrases and we need to like bust through that and like get to the nitty gritty. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How do we become better leaders, but also not get stuck in the platitudes?
Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of sort of advancing and dusting off and modernizing some of the language around leadership, the methodologies around leadership development, some of the assessment tools even that we've all experienced and used around, what kind of leader are you? And really think about breaking some of those categories or barriers or expectations about what leadership should look, act, and sound and behave like. Leadership development's been around for a long time, right? Almost 100 years, if not more. And the leader of today looks and sounds and behaves quite differently than the leader of 10, 20, for sure 50 years ago. So how can we adapt a new language about how we talk about our leadership that feels not just buzzwordy, but actually feels tangible and actionable and meaningful to us, and start to understand each other as leaders, not necessarily based on past behaviors of leadership or past stereotypes of leadership, but in a new light that really celebrates the individuality of the leader and what makes them distinctly themselves versus trying to fit them into some sort of box or category or expectation of what leadership should look like. So we're trying to break down the barriers of how we understand and talk about leadership, and do away with the dusty old antiquated words or some of the buzzwords that have become overused, and really make it about pretty simply just helping leaders get very clear on who they are internally, so that externally they can express that through their leadership brand in a way that's clear, cohesive, consistent, and impactful, specific to the goals that they have. So we're kind of taking it, real basic. Internal clarity becomes external confidence, and that external confidence manifests in your brand as a leader.
I love it. So be yourself, because there's only one of you, and dig down and find your inner self, become that best version. And so what was this like for you? Did you struggle with this? Like when you were younger, did you have kind of the conflict of like not being your best self or not being a leader? Like what was the transformation like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, be very open and transparent. Being a member of the LGBTQ plus community, as I was starting out in business school in the early 2000s, having to actually make a decision through the recruiting process at University of Chicago, pretty well-respected school, whether I was going to be out to potential employers. And I remember kind of the fork in the road at that time, and learning very quickly that I would not really want to work in, nor would I fit into a work culture that did not accept me for being who I am. And that was, a decision I'm proud to make, and I'm glad to have made. And it wasn't all roses, I'll say. There were definitely work cultures where I felt like I couldn't really bring my full identity, my full personality, my style into the leadership roles that I was in. And I was in mostly in marketing and brand management roles for large global organizations. And every time I kind of found myself in a place where I couldn't really bring my full self into work and really my full leadership style, which did not look or sound like the leaders of those companies necessarily. That tension, that conflict often kind of was the spark for me to look for other opportunities where I could sort of find that alignment in those work cultures where I could be myself.
So it sounds like a lot to figure out, right? Like how
Yeah,
much of your identity do you bring into your workplace? And then if it's not working for you, then you make the decision to then go somewhere else. And I mean, what we've definitely come a long way as a world in the past 30 years, right? I think
yep,
about like in
absolutely.
the 90s, like being like LGBTQ was like something like to kind of maybe like snicker at. But then now
Yep,
it seems like, especially these last few years, it's like, a lot of it, it's like just none of our business, right? And so
yeah,
like what is the message that maybe we need to hear about all this kind of LGBTQ inclusion in the workplace? Like, what are
yep.
people just like not aware enough about?
Yeah, I mean, the headline that I will often share, and this is kind of the premise of the book, Leadership Types, is that everyone has the capacity to lead, not just those who have historically led. In our country, our world has often been led by a certain profile of a person, typically, historically, statistically, cisgender white male is the model of leadership, and that's still, by statistics, a lot of industries and companies are led in that way. But that's not the only way to lead. And there are aspects and attributes and characteristics and strengths of leadership, I believe, in everybody. And can we elicit those things? Can we, untap that potential that exists within a lot of people, not just a specific set of people, and cultivate that and help them lead in different ways. And I think it's almost, the business case for diversity, equity, inclusion is one that, is debated. But in my mind and in my experience, companies who include, and it's not just about gender, race, identity, diversity in thought, right? When we have different opinions and perspectives and experiences at that leadership table, there's more innovation, there's more tension is not a bad thing, right? Tension is what creates new discussions, new opportunities, and we can kind of uncover new possibilities when we have people that don't all think the same or aren't informed by the same background. So it's really about tapping into that potential that when you look at a large organization, there's a lot of human potential there, and can we elicit and draw that out? And that's the goal of our work, is to help bring forward people who may not necessarily be next in line for leadership roles, but help open up possibilities for new, more modern and innovative ways to lead.
I love it. So
Cool.
tension is good.
Yeah, tension's
Opening
great.
the possibilities is
Yeah,
good, and that we need
exactly.
to tap into our potential. And this is definitely a thing that I think I can relate to, and a lot of people can relate to. Just kind of being shyer in the younger days and saying like, "Hey, I need to get over that and use stress to my advantage." And so I'm really curious about kind of the transformation you provide, right? Because it's one thing to say like, "Okay, here are all these things that we should be doing, and that's great," but then what's really powerful is hearing about the stories. Like if there was like someone in particular that maybe was stuck, blocked, hung up, and you said like, "Hey, here's a better way of doing it." Do you have anything like that, like a fun case study, success story to kind of demonstrate the magic for us?
Yeah, I think, and I know always respectful of the confidentiality of our clients, who work for some of the larger, global organizations. So, kind of profile an example for you, but really, we typically work with kind of that middle to upper level management within an organization. And these folks who are kind of seeking that next level up, whether it's promotion, they're kind of next in line for a big senior or C level role. And it's the transformation that we tend to work through. And these folks have executive coaches, they have leadership development happening within the companies, but they're missing something that is really specific to the branding of themselves, that is really maybe holding them back from being seen and positioning themselves to be, ready, perceived as ready for that next thing. So the transformation to kind of get them ready to say, okay, this is my brand and I'm proud of it. I'm going to tell my story and kind of hone my messaging in this way, is really more of a psychological transformation from a place of kind of complexity of, I want to, if I say to you, Robert, tell me your story, and you 9 minutes later, you're still telling me your story and it's confusing and I can't follow, that's a challenge, right? When you're presenting yourself. So we move folks from a place where it may be complex, the way that they're talking about themselves, to a much clearer place of how they articulate their purpose, their mission, their vision, who they are as a leader. And then the other transformation is kind of from another psychological perspective around self-doubt or like insecurities, the imposter syndrome, right? These things that are internal barriers to us, and getting people almost like reminded of what makes them so great and so special and powerful as leaders. And we do that through a deeper kind of discovery interview process where we get to like what is really motivating to them. And we supplement that with interviews with who we call their key stakeholders, kind of their champions. And we listen to these people. And so in your life, it might be, a professional colleague, a close personal contact, a mentor of yours. These folks are going to be able to tell us some really powerful things about you, these assets that you possess that you may have forgotten about or you've put away or you don't really remember. And we bring those back to the leader and say, hey, don't forget about these things that make you so great. And we help use those insights to build them up to understand, okay, not smoke and mirrors, but to say, this is you at your best. This is how you thrive. This is what people look to you for. Here's your potential. We use that to help that transformation from that place of insecurity to more confidence. So it's complexity to clarity and sort of insecurity to confidence. That's kind of the behind the scene transformation to get people ready for that next level.
I love it.
Cool.
Complexity to clarity and insecurity to confidence.
Exactly.
And I never know when there's like an idea that I keep seeing more of, I never know if I see more of it because I'm just kind of moving into that space or if it's just becoming more popular. But this whole idea of having the personal brand on like your website and your TikTok and your LinkedIn and your YouTube and kind of all have it all in such a way that you're kind of repeating a message and that people could almost like tell what you would say or tell what you're about. It seems really powerful in order to, as you're saying, like put your best foot forward, but also have it curated with your greatest hits and also stand for something, but also have it be condensed. That way, if someone says, hey, like, why are you perfect for this or what's the benefit for you like working on this project, it's like, hey, I can say it in like such a quick amount of time. And it seems to like open a lot of the doors, right? It makes your communication better in all sorts of ways. And so if someone is maybe needed to be sold on this idea of having good leadership and having a good personal brand, like what holds people back? Why do people perhaps self-sabotage or don't pay attention to this as much as they should?
Yeah, and great insights shared there, Robert. I think, this idea of the brand being clear, concise, cohesive. Those are kind of the three C's we talk about in a more traditional branding perspective. What holds people back, I think, is a lack of strategy, kind of a lack of a plan. Without just like any product or company that has a brand, right? There's a brand book, there's a strategy to guide how that brand shows up clearly, concisely, consistently, across all consumer or customer touch points. The same thing would apply to a person. What is your brand strategy? What are your main messaging themes? Who's your audience? How are you showing up visually, verbally? Your values identity, all these things, there are guardrails that a strategy can sort of set in place to help you filter what you say and what you do for maximum impact. So just like any strategy helps you decide what to say yes and no to, a brand strategy for yourself can help you guide, okay, should I post that or should I speak in that way or not, and kind of that filtering mechanism. So people sometimes jump to, I want to have a great social media presence, but they don't have a strategy kind of behind the scenes, that foundation. So that's really the work that we do. As I mentioned, earlier, like we're not executive coaches, right? We are more brand strategists to help people sort of set that foundation. And then they go live into it. They have to practice it, bring it to life. But without that strategy, it's hard to execute tactically out in the market in a way that's, again, putting your best foot forward or well branded.
100%. I can see how if someone didn't know that they need to have the strategy or have some
Yep.
goals, then they might just be kind of aimless and not really knowing what it's for, not what they're building to, or should I post that? Should I not post that? So I can see how it can help to put some of this deep thinking in and figure out what the guardrails are and figure out what we're leading to. And so, like, what are the goals typically? Like, when you work with these people, do they say, like, I want to ascend here in my career or get this size of following? Like, what are they working to achieve with this brand?
Yeah, good question. So it's different for every individual. We start every project with an onboarding where we want to get really clear on intended outcomes. And typically the outcomes are not quantitative in nature; they're more qualitative around. It could be a level up promotion, which would hopefully be more money for them, right? But it's not around social media metrics. Or if someone comes to us and says, "Hey, I want 30,000 Instagram followers. Can you help me?" That's not the work we do. You should go hire a social media agency for that. But if they come to us and say, hey, based on their context, their goals, the vision that they have for their career, or their profession. In some cases, we work with nonprofit leaders, right? They're not necessarily about selling something, but they have a cause or something that's very tangible that they're trying to achieve. So we get really clear on their goals, their context, and then the brand is an enabler for that. So the brand in some cases could help someone get a promotion. In some cases, the brand could help them reposition to a totally different career. We've worked with college basketball coaches who become great business leaders. We work with business leaders who want to become a nonprofit leader, and those folks in transition in their career. So the brand is a vehicle or an enabler that is going to be useful for them very specifically to help them achieve their goal. So we listen to that goal first and then help them build the brand strategy accordingly.
Well, this is an amazing concept here of saying, like, well, here's where you're at right now in your life and your career, and here's where you want to be, and then you use the branding in order to get there. And it's just like, for some reason, it makes my mind do strange things when, like, say, like I do a podcast like this one, right? And someone says, hey, I've got this company or I've got this app and I want to get more attention to it. But then sometimes I'll interview someone and they're like some kind of like a C-suite business leader, and she's like, well, I don't have my own company. I have this position in this organization, and I just wanted to get more attention to it. And I'm just like, that's really cool that it's not just for someone that like owns a whole company or like manages 500 people or has an app. It can be for anyone who just like has these sort of career goals or wants to get somewhere. And
Exactly.
so, since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, that's definitely an area that I want to jump into, because we can either talk about like the scaling secrets you've learned just by like being around all this, or in your own journey, what kind of do you wish you knew about like scaling a business, or what could have shortcut your success? So just what do you have to share with us in general about the world of scaling secrets?
Yeah, good question. I appreciate the different ways in. I think, rather than talk about the specifics of we're still a small-ish business, kind of probably compared to some of the folks listening, and we're on a path to growth. If I step back and look at some of the, global iconic brands that I had the chance to work on early in my career, you're talking about brands like Skittles or M&Ms, and we're working on projects for large food and beverage companies, here in the Chicago area, let's just say. Look at those global powerhouses, and what would I kind of, from a branding and marketing perspective, assess as the scaling secrets there. For me, it really comes back to the brand and the power of a brand to drive growth. The brand is such a valuable asset, and brands that are go easy on the minds of the consumer, right? So our brains are designed to not like and avoid a lot of friction. So brands have to be easy to understand, easy to visually digest, easily to consume, right? To take into our lives. Brands are consistent, they're cohesive, they're clear, just like we talked about earlier with our own personal brands. But these global brands they have a lot of people, a lot of smart people working on making sure that those touch points from a product, packaging, promotional standpoint are very consistent and clear always. And it's about getting, this idea of having loyalty for your brand is really not as important as having new users, kind of that increasing the number of households that may be aware of or trying your brand. So this idea of like, back in my consumer packaged goods days, it's all about household penetration, like getting as many households to try your product. And then less of a focus is about that deeper kind of super heavy loyal user. That's important, but that's not what's going to grow your business. It's really about getting that top of the funnel kind of growth out there. So thinking about scaling in terms of attracting more users to your brand, regardless of the size, and then making sure that when a consumer or customer interfaces with any communication or any touch point with that brand, that it's adhering to some brand guidelines, and that will cement that brand in the hearts and the minds of the consumer or the customer, and make it a long-term viable proposition.
And I love this message that we need to be finding new people, because there's so much built into that, right? It's saying that you need to be kind of doing the constant work and keeping this in mind and figuring out like where those people are at and what to do to get attention. And I imagine that there are some ways to go wrong, because like just a couple hours ago, the wife and I were at the store and I saw something that it was like stuffed cinnamon toast crunch cereal. And I'm like, that's something new and interesting. And it got my attention and I bought some and I haven't tried it yet. But like sometimes you see something at the store, like you mentioned, the packaging,
Yep.
and it's like either like the same product, new packaging, or they kind of do the spin-off, the kind of line item, new thing. But I imagine that it's easy to maybe try to take shortcuts or be lazy. Like imagine if Harley Davidson made a fully electric, quiet motorcycle. Like people would hate it, but I
Right.
could imagine how the thinking might be like, hey, we're stuck in this region of customers. Let's like expand that. So what do people need to know about getting new customers in the door, but without making the mistakes and getting too lazy or crazy?
Yeah, great example. I think the Harley Davidson one, I'll stick on that one. So the mistake is, in that effort to get trial or new users, that you forget who you are, what makes you the brand what it is, and that's sort of the DNA, the equity of the brand. So in the example you shared, which I love, is like if Davidson have a silent electric motorcycle, that would be so off brand for them that it would confuse and disappoint their consumers, and kind of be uh, confusing in the way that people would not know what to expect next, and that they're, maybe something's strategically, like it just is so wrong, right? Doesn't fit. So in the effort to drive trial and new users, to not deviate too far from what that sort of the North Star and the distinctive assets and the equity of the brand is. Otherwise, you're going to confuse the hell out of consumers, and you risk, the worst thing is to put a suboptimal product out there, especially for these product or consumable companies, right? Quality is always paramount. The product experience has to deliver. You can have the greatest advertising, the greatest promotion, the greatest branding, but if that product doesn't deliver, you'll lose that consumer, and that negative word of mouth is as is could be very detrimental. So there's always that watch out to not lose sight of who you are, what makes the brand what it is, and not innovation is important, but you can't deviate too far from that North Star.
So innovate, but also don't deviate from the North Star
Yep.
and don't be too off base of who you are. So like what does excite you as far as with the exciting kind of maybe calculated risks that sometimes are taken with branding, or actions that are taken to get these new customers in the door? Like what have you seen that just really just gets you like super enthusiastic?
Yeah, I mean, we are living, the digital age of, it's probably even dated to call it that way, but just the use of creative use of technology to delight and make the consumer experience even better. So, AI is this double-edged sword, but if where AI can kind of be beneficial and helpful and bring better, creative ideas to the table, that's I'm excited by all those things that can be unlocked through technology such as that. And I'm always, I think from a you know what phase of life, right? So I'm a parent. You have kids, and as a parent, when you're now purchasing things for your kids, your household, like just seeing what new ideas are exciting to them, to the younger generation. As we get older, you kind of lose sight of like what is that perspective of, a teenager or a kid in terms of like what is exciting and part of their lives and the brands that they consume, the products that they're interested in. I'm paying attention to those things as a marketer, as a branding person, to say, okay, what is it about this that is so sticky, right? That's sticking with them and that they love. Because the brands I like are kind of dusty and older at this point, but that is exciting to me. And then I'm a sucker for kind of, I talked about loyalty, but like I'm a basketball player and I've always loved Nike, and I grew up watching Michael Jordan. I'm always amazed when a brand that's been around for a long time can evolve and stay relevant and stay modern to the current consumer, and kind of seeing how they still stay true to who they are, but they are experimenting at the edges with some cool things around technology and fashion and all those different things. So kind of those brands that are able to adapt and evolve over time. I'm always kind of excited by those things.
And what has Nike been doing that's cutting edge and kind of surprising you? Because like I remember maybe 10 years ago, I think Nike was one of the first that I saw that had like a fitness tracker kind of app, and then now a lot of companies like kind of absorb that, and we kind of take it more for granted. But like, what have you seen as far as the latest and greatest with Nike?
Yeah, I mean, and I think from their like from a business perspective, it may not have been or shareholder perspective, it wasn't maybe the best thing, but their efforts to kind of go more direct to consumer were interesting, like with the Nike app and some of the fitness tracking concepts that they had, but really like the customization I thought was really novel and cool, but where you could customize, like get your name, Robert, on the side of your Nikes and the colors that match your alma mater, and like have it at your doorstep in 2 days. Like pretty cool. I think like the individualization, the customization, the influence of technology on these durable goods or brands like that is always cool, and I think they'll figure it out over time. But that kind of direct to consumer approach is pretty powerful.
Well, cool. So,
Yeah.
they're always experimenting, and that is a lesson in itself. And just this idea that to get AI to be more than just a buzzword, you figure out, well, how can we like ultra customize it to individual people? And so, you have this company, Breakthrough Brands, and you have this exciting upcoming book, Leadership Types. And so, what has you interested about the future? What do you have to send us to, or check out, or like do our homework? What are some next steps here?
Yeah, I think so. As we've evolved, entering our fifth year as a company, really the shift from where we were to where we are. We initially started focusing our work on individual leaders and kind of their development. So one-on-one projects, and that was kind of how we built our initial roster of clients. We have evolved to be now today an organizational solution. So we'll ideally work with a company, and they will identify a cohort or group of leaders to take through our leadership branding development program. So we'll take, hopefully 50, 100, 500 leaders and work with them through our same process, but kind of treating it as a group targeted advancement program versus just a one-off, one-on-one leader solution. So this, I'm really excited to kind of to connect with heads of HR, learning and development, talent management, right, who are looking for innovative, inclusive, modern solutions to help really elevate those mid to upper level folks in their organization, to help advance their impact and be seen as an organizational solution, where there's competition, right, that has been there for a long time, but kind of an upstart within that space.
Very cool. And those are some scaling secrets, right? That's
Yes.
like where you're working on one, and now you're working with larger cohorts. And then you have the book Leadership Types, a barrier breaking approach to empower leaders. And so within that book, once it's out, like, is there anything that is like particularly noteworthy or something that like maybe we can't find anywhere else? Like, are you the kind of person that says like, hey, open to page 62, you're going to be blown away with what's in there? Like, what is there something that's very standoutish in this upcoming book?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the heart of the book, and like the book is oriented all around our unique development model, which is called the spectrum of leadership empowerment. So imagine this beautiful wheel of 12 distinct leadership types, and the leadership types are a way for us to kind of identify who we are as a leader, what makes us so strong, and our values, and really it's underpinned by two big things. What is intrinsically motivating to you, sort of the psychology of that leadership type, and then what is sort of that archetype of leadership that represents. So you'll find yourself, there's a simple quiz to take at leadershiptypes.com to sort of see where you may initially chart on that spectrum to see what your leadership style is. And then some great tools to sort of say, okay, how do you use that knowledge about your leadership type to start to build that brand kind of per that archetype of leadership and sort of put that out into the world. So that's the combination of psychology and branding and leadership that is represented in this spectrum is pretty powerful. And we haven't seen anything like it, but we're really excited to share that with the world.
It sounds like it covers a lot of the bases, and I imagine that a lot of people maybe took a personality quiz like this years ago, but didn't really apply it, or maybe they're looking on the outside, but not the inside. So this seems like a fantastic opportunity to get some real data and put it to use and change your own life and change some other lives and change your organization. And that is leadershiptypes.com to check out the book and breakthrough.brands.com to check out the company. Are there any other links we should drop, or how do we know how does someone know if they're like the exact person to go in and check out some of these resources?
Yeah, I think we are big. We leverage LinkedIn a lot from a professional networking and growth standpoint, and that's a great way to kind of see we share some stories of leader profiles of who we've partnered with, organizations we've worked with. So find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect that way and do some initial exploration to see if we're a fit for your organization.
Very cool. And to find Laura on LinkedIn, that's Laura Barnard. That's Barnard. Go there, click the message button, start this
Yep.
conversation, say that you heard Laura on the Scaling Secrets podcast and you loved some of her ideas. You loved her leadership and personal branding ideas and the ideas of her book and just some of these ways where people might be missing the mark, but can hopefully correct them, solve some problems, achieve some goals and dreams. And so we go to check out Laura Barnard on LinkedIn, breakthroughbrands.com, leadershiptypes.com. It's time to stump you a little bit, Laura, or
Oh
attempt to,
no.
and end with a bang instead of a whimper. Instead of just saying goodbye, I like to ask my guests for a fun quote or lesson that has helped them, that can help us. So what comes to mind as far as a cool quote or lesson?
Okay, well, this is one I often share, with our clients, and people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So this idea of, we all have, great experience, great resumes. We know a lot about certain things, but it's really about caring and having empathy and connecting with people. That's really what's going to stick with them more than what you know or what you've done. So it's really about who you are rather than what you are or what you've done that matters. And I would love to leave that notion with people.
And I will be thinking about that for quite a while, having caring, empathy, kindness, be a decent person. It's great that you're smart and have all this information and data and facts and figures, but also just be an excellent human being and care about the people that are around you.
Yep.
And it's very logical and makes perfect sense as we go and check out leadershiptypes.com, breakthroughbrands.com, and Laura Barnard on LinkedIn. Laura, it's been a wonderful, fabulous, fun conversation with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Robert.
All right, very cool.